Whenever you're ready.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Brian Bierman here, and I'm here to present to you mobile device management. And the subtopics here are just the implementations that mobile device management has to offer. Next slide. Okay, so what is MDM? MDM is a software that IT administrators control, secure, and enforce policies on smartphones, tablets, and other devices. And it basically manages company-owned and user-owned devices. So like when you bring your own device, what the IT administration will do is that they'll get your device's serial number, and then they'll make sure that it's on a system so that when you have your devices secure, and then when you're free to go, when you leave the company, it's no longer managed. So that's how it works. And it just gives a centralized management of all mobile devices within the company. So as you see here, there's different kinds of operating systems for these mobile devices. Basically with MDM, they can manage everything, so you don't have to worry about what kind of OS it is.
Next slide.
Oh, I'll give you one next time. Okay, now this is application management. And yeah, managing mobile apps can be a challenge, and not all applications are secure, especially with Android. As I've been hearing, most APKs that you can install might have a malware on it. So to fix the solution, what mobile device manager does is that they have their own whitelist that, whoever devices that are in the mobile device management, they have, if it's in the whitelist, they're allowed to install it. That means that they're approved and that those apps are secure for them. And they constantly get updated all the time by end users. So if you want an app that you feel like should be on the whitelist, it will get updated. This slide. And that's Office content management. Content management just brings security to data, and it just protects the data from outsiders. So what it can do, it has data loss prevention, which just prevents copy and paste of the data. Also, data is also encrypted so that even if you try to copy and paste the data, it won't actually be the data that it is because the code is already deciphered. And then this works either on site or cloud services, so it's totally secure. This slide. Remote write. Remote write is used when there's like someone in the building that has your device, or somehow your device is stolen and you don't know where it is. What the IT measures can do is that they can completely clear out all information in the device so that that data doesn't get taken away. So it's just a backup solution in case anything wrong, bad happens. This slide. Geolocation and geofencing. So geolocation they just offer a GPS tracking on the device. That if you're worried that your device might get stolen or lost, we can have GPS on it. But yeah. And then for geofencing, it just restricts or allows features whenever you're in a certain location. So this is great for if you need to sign into your device, right? And you want to make sure that no one else can sign into that device because you might have personal information. So you might stand inside I don't know, a closet and just to sign in, and it will work. But anywhere else it won't work. That's how geofencing works. Okay, this slide. Screen locks. Okay. Basically, all mobile devices have to get locked, or otherwise, what are you doing? Why are you at that company? You can have a simple passcode or a strong passcode. Most people prefer alphanumeric, but you can have numbers. And if you fail too many times, then they can just remote wipe it, just get off completely. Or you can get a lockout policy, so where if you if you keep on getting the wrong password every time, that device have a 30-second timeout, and then it can increase every time. So yeah, screen locks. Next slide. And then push notifications. So with push notifications, it's just information that appears on your phone. That's what it is. And basically MDM can control that. So that's it, really. Push notifications. And back to the next slide. Passwords and pins. So MDM has full control over passwords and pins. If you ever need help, you don't need help. If you ever forgot or you need to reset your password, just go up to the help desk and we'll be here to assist you. This slide. And those are the sources I use.
A lot of nice use of combination of pictures, size of the fonts, not a whole lot of text, well, a little bit, but overall pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, overall pretty clean. Please forgive me because I have potato brains at the moment. But let's see. Does anybody have any like recommendations or thoughts? Things that he did well?
Okay. I was kind of sad. You were just looking over there. I'm just kidding, but
Yeah, I was trying to look.
No, yeah, I know.
This is
the whole audience. Yeah, I like. I like how you kind of put. You made it kind of funny in some areas. You caught the audience's attention. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I do agree on your part. I did like that. He's going to put that around the presentation.
Oh yeah, the only thing I need to improve, I think, is a little preparation because I did have a lot going on this week, as you can tell, as I talked about before.
But he did really good.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go in with my feedback. So my first point is I would be wary of looking too much towards the slides because what you tend to do is that, my bad, since you're the only one that's presenting, maybe I hope this feedback is not too hard for whatever the way I'm working. So good or bad, but so I noticed that you look at the slides and then present your points, which makes sense. But it is kind of like a slippery slope because it lends to you just reading off the slides, which can be kind of disengaging as an audience. So if I were you, I would make sure to it doesn't have to be 100% all the content in the slides. I feel like a lot of people focus on trying to present as much information as possible, but you as a presenter have the ability to control what is presented. So it doesn't have to be everything per se, but it's enough to, a general explanation for us basically. Because what you did was that you did read the points, but you summarized it perfectly. So focus on that summarizing part. You knew how to say it. I just feel like whenever you came back to the slides, it was this weird back and forth. So that's one feedback that I do have. Another thing that I would do is I would avoid using sentences in slides because this is just in general. Avoid using 100% sentences, in my opinion, because it lends to you wanting to read those sentences aloud. And it makes the slides less useful for you as a point to kind of present. So say you're like lost, and you look at it, it's like sentences everywhere. You don't know where your eye is supposed to look at, what you're supposed to be reminded of. So avoid using sentences. Keep very simple, like not necessarily sentences, but like keep it very, very, very short. So if you ever get lost, you're able to come back to it. Another thing that you did at the beginning was that whenever you were doing your overview, you said, here are my points, and then you pointed to the slides, which is something you also want to avoid because it was a very quick transition between us reading what we were going to cover and then getting into the slides. But yeah, let's see, I really like the way you use your gestures. You were really expressive. You moved around using gestures, which is really good. That had me pretty engaged. I think in terms of going through your slides, what you should do is, I noticed that like whenever you got to the next slides, you started the title kind of important point, which in a way I think it works. At the same time, it would be helpful to have a quick general intro to kind of break me into the content, because it's like you bring in terminology and it's like, oh, whoa, like I'm not acquainted with like what the big picture of it is. So it can be a bit surprising at times, but over time, as you get to the points, we can form a bigger picture together as you cover it all in the slide. But it would be helpful to have that intro, a really quick like intro for each slide point. Again, humor, great. And then last thing I wrote, I noticed that one thing that you did, actually I don't know if it's too much of a problem, because you did really good in terms of like the content, changing content. I just do think that one thing that will help take the slides to the next level, if you were like able to contextualize this better with, I guess, more real world example, make it more than just like, this is what the policy is, just how like in the industry, how is it like, well, what are the consequences, what's the impact, right? So that makes it more, it drives things home. So yeah, that's my feedback so far. Okay, so hopefully that helped. Did I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I remember the thing, my potato brain, gross, but whatchamacallit, yeah, a lot of the energy started off really strong. That was also pretty consistent in your first presentation. Like you really brought the energy, like getting that attention kind of stuff in the beginning. And then would you say, like, since you're not so familiar with the mobile device management, like a little bit of your confidence kind of like waned a little bit over time? Yeah, it can be very hard to like still sound confident whenever you're trying to teach or demonstrate things that you're not 100% in. Let's see, but yeah.
I can say that maybe like even if you don't know, like oftentimes whenever I present, I don't know everything. There's no way someone can know everything about a topic. But if you say it in a very simple way, it will make it sound like you know everything. That's the mystique of presenting, right? A lot of folks, I think the last session, they were like very nervous. They're like, I don't know, I felt like I didn't know what I was saying. But in actuality, everybody was like, what? Yeah, I'm pretty sure like you knew your stuff.
Unless someone's there and they already know the content that you're presenting, that's the only case.
Yes.
As a presenter, you have control of the conversation. So from our point of view, we can't prod you for information because you're presenting. In comparison to a conversation where you can check your understanding. It's more of a one-way communication rather than what might expect a deeper understanding of the topic.
I guess if I could add to that as well, with presentation, it's all right to make, some mistakes. You only have so much time. Conversation, good rule of thumb is you don't really want to sit what you know pretty well. In a conversation, if you're talking, like they said, with someone more experienced, don't try to pretend you know what they do, even if,
Oh yeah, it's good to establish.
Yeah, if you want
where
to
you
tell
are.
them how much you know, and they'll understand, because, some people are like, if you try to, if you have a surface level understanding and you're talking to someone who's like really good, he'll know almost immediately. They'll be able to tell that you don't actually know what you're saying, which can be bad, but it's more of a, if they know you're not very experienced, they'll understand.
Yeah.
It could leave a bad impression.
That is a true thing. It is okay to say you don't know certain things, or you will leave certain parts out. Like this is beyond the scope of our conversation, or whatever. And then people will be like, okay, alrighty. Well, won't bat an eye for it. That's what I'll say. But yeah, if that is a thing. Like if you genuinely do not know too much about a certain part, it is good to mention that you like from your understanding or based from like just use words that basically show that this is what you know. But yeah, that's all. That honestly takes a little bit of experience.
Is there anything that you feel like you did better on compared to your first time around?
I guess my voice, and then faking it till I make it.
Yes.
and then I got better at winking, because I didn't really. I was prepared the last time until that accident happened, and then I just decided to wing it.
Yeah, you did good. You did good for it, though.
Is there anything that you would like to improve for next time?
Better prepared. If I don't know what to say, I have to say things a little bit more simpler, or at least express how much I know about that certain topic that I'm presenting.
Yeah, I think one thing that people forget that you can do is that you can absolutely slow down and like break things apart. You don't have to like get into the juice of it, like make it part of it ASAP. You can walk around and like basically paint pictures for people. I feel like, especially like this is just my experience with especially CS professors, but like they go to a slide, they don't even explain anything. They're like, well, bam, you understand now. I'm like, come on, man, like. You know what I mean? So it is part of my like, personal fight to kind of instill that idea of explain things a little bit and like give some context, paint a picture, and then let us all in because I feel like the world can be better. So
Like they gave you the appetizers, the dessert, the salad, but left out the main course.
yeah. So cool.
Awesome.
A lot of feedback.
Thank you.
I think it was very helpful.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You did really good.
And then nobody else is presenting, right? Or
Actually, remember I was sick that time?
oh, okay. I wasn't so
Oh,
sure if you
wow.
presented like earlier in the day or something.
Yeah, that's why I was gone for like 2 weeks.
Okay. So this guy.
Let's see.
Yeah, after this, I'm back on the.
Let's
I
see.
can just share it. I shared the links with you, Marie, on Discord.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That should be the. That works. This intersection. And I was still really sick for like 2 weeks on this.
It's okay.
Oh, can you approve access? It says that I have to request access. It probably sent you an email just now.
All right, gosh.
Hmm?
Here we go.
Alrighty. Let me refresh real quick.
All right, that should work.
Alrighty. Ah, there we go.
Doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah. Let me. Share my screen again. Alrighty.
All right.
Let's see. Okay, I'm still recording. Still recording. Microphone, camera's on. Alrighty. Whenever you're ready.
All right, good to go. So software-defined networking, I'll just give you guys a quick preview. So perfect picture, right? Explains everything, just one look, obvious. Obviously not this actually happens quite a bit with new stuff in tech, especially software-defined networking is in this weird, awkward place. Because if you look online, there's no real clear consensus. Like, I searched a lot, trust me, Stack Overflow, Reddit, some like forums, and everyone's like, yeah, no one has a good definition for it. Part of the reason why is that there's a lot of buzzwords going around, because, IT's kind of, when you think of IT, like your networks and stuff, it's kind of old school. We've been doing it old school for a long time, but ever since AWS and Azure and some other things, not to mention Python blew up, so even like people who normally would never touch programming at all, they do Python. So we also use Python for scripting, which is kind of how you manage like devices. That's where software-defined networking came in. And like I said, overall, it's kind of vague. It's kind of like when you looked up API, no one can really give you a good definition of the term. But I'll just give you a quick explanation. Basically, this right here is a switch. So a switch is you'll see in a bit, but basically a switch is what connects your devices. So you know how you have all your laptops, right? If you have a switch, if you connect all your devices to that switch, it's like kind of like a network, like LAN parties. Ever heard of that? Local area networks. What you would use for that is a switch. Now a router, which is right here, the circular thing, it basically allows you to connect to the internet. So while you can make a network for just your devices, pretty boring, right? Most of us want to touch Google, right? YouTube, all that stuff. That's where you use a router, and that allows you to basically connect to other networks. Because the World Wide Web is really just one huge network. But yeah, and the SDN controller basically we're abstracting stuff. Could you go to the next slide, Maria?
Mhm.
This will expand actually a bit more. So this is what a home lab looks like. It's a pretty nice home lab actually. This right here is actually a router. This as well as a router, whereas this is switch. You can tell the difference in that switches have all these Ethernet ports. The reason for that is that's where you connect all your devices, and this is your router. So what the router does is that all your computers are connected to one switch. This is like a corporate network, right? And what the router does, it basically gives an IP address that connects to all these devices. So instead of each device necessarily having their own IP address, they have like their own address for themselves. But you see right here, this is basically the command line interface for the devices. These are Cisco routers. If you actually log in, this is what you'll see on the device. So when you go to router enable, what that command does is, hey, we're going to configure this device. So configure T is configure the terminal. And then you basically enter global mode. And you see right here, interface fast Ethernet 00. You're actually opening the interfaces and giving them an IP address. Since technically in your network, it doesn't really matter what address you give them, since it's kind of closed off, right? You have your own address that your internet provider will give you, like ATT or whatever, and that's what you'll actually put on your router. That's how like the external gets into you. But this is like local. So then you have things like no shutdown. You give it a name. Now this isn't too bad, right? But we're talking about like corporate networks, right? Hell, even the school. We're talking about dozens, if not hundreds, even thousands of devices. It's not so bad if you're just configuring these, but a lot of these are you're either configuring them manual or you're SSHing to them with PuTTY. Imagine how annoying this would be when you're dealing with hundreds, thousands of devices. This setup actually happens, by the way. One of my friends actually has a home lab, and we both got to actually log into these devices and actually configure them. It's really cool. It gets way more complex than that, but that's basically what you would see. Go next, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of a network would be, for example, this one from the University of Michigan. Right over there, you have your ISPs. Now AWS also, because sometimes they have like direct lines. And as you can see, pretty complicated, right? Like the actual mesh for this would look way more insane. I'm pretty sure UTA is like monstrous as well. From what I can see, for example, you see that access point right up there, the one right in front of the projector. It's right here. Yep, that one has its own IP address. It's part of the network design for this building. And like each building has their own network basically. And that access point is actually part of something called a wireless LAN controller. And it basically connects all those access points. Like I said, that's how like the diagram would look. This is what they have some guy at UTA has, like the IT department has their own design for this. It's very possible their own map is outdated though, but that's basically how it looks. All right, go ahead, Maria. So to get around the really annoying part with having to configure everything manually, since basically most of the physical stuff is just setting up the devices, right? Getting them on premises, plugging them in. That's basically it. So this actually NetVico, this is Python. This is a Python library that basically allows you to configure devices remotely. So what you can do is actually, you don't actually need an engineer. You can just get like someone less experienced or someone slightly tech savvy and tell them, hey, set up all these devices in this order with this stuff, and just connect it to the internet, make sure it's on. And then what they can do actually is sometimes they'll have like a software packet, they'll have like a central database, and the moment the device connects, basically they have like a huge file command for all the devices, and as soon as they turn on, bang, all your configuration is done for all the devices. So basically what you're seeing here is you can have all your devices like programmed, right? Like, hey, router 1, instead of having to manually go all of them, assign variables to your router, and you can basically configure everything programmatically. This is an example of software-defined network. This is actually more hands down with your own design. There are actually some things that are hands off, but you're about to see that on the next slide. But with this, it's like, for example, if you're a network engineer and you actually need quite a bit of Python, you could do this. You could actually, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the networks here were actually configured that way. This is insane though, this gets pretty crazy. So that's why you see network engineers less and less. They're still pretty in demand. Their skill set's very much needed. But that's why you see less openings for them in terms of like just physical people, just because of this. Like I said, you can have an administrator basically hook up, just give them the command, run everything, and they can just configure everything from home. It's also why most of the time when it's on site, it's like the data centers and stuff. But yeah, you can go next, Maria. And this is an example of a software-defined network, like something from a third-party resource. This is Cisco Meraki. Basically, from what you can see here is you can actually see the diagnostics. So obviously with like things like Namico, you could actually make your own tool for this, but you can actually just go straight to the party, right? Cisco, and for example, Network Ride. Here we have top access points. So those access points over there, you can actually monitor. And you see the map right here, you could actually see, hey, on the map, so for UT, hey, Trimble Hall, access points, this and that. You can actually see the traffic. Like I said, this is like simplified for your network administrators that don't need to know that much, because sometimes you just need to have like broad overview, right? The main downside to devices like this is you don't have as much control, right? It's kind of like GUI. That's the whole reason why sometimes you have to open up the command line PowerShell, right? You can't do everything graphically, right? That's basically this. You're graphicizing the network. You're basically abstracting all the low-level stuff instead of having to like plug into everything. You're programming. So if I had to summarize the software-defined network, it's basically, it's kind of like an API. Well, then but go back on that actually, because that would require some prerequisite knowledge. But you're basically abstracting all the low-level stuff instead of having to manually check, configure router, having to know everything. You can use a third-party service and make it way easier. So there's there's less work, right? But yeah, that's more or less software-defined network. I know this one's a bit sloppy. It's just kind of a complex topic, just because it's pretty new. No one really has a good definition for it, and it's just network engineering is just kind of broad because you can technically talk about AWS, and that's also software-defined networking in a sense. That's what makes it so weird. That's like a good overview of it. But yeah. Any questions about it? I'm actually pretty well versed on this topic. So.
What's the difference between this and cloud network?
Okay, so the difference with cloud network management is that on cloud, it's similar actually, but so you know how you saw like the physical router stuff? You actually have the routers, but they're virtualized, right? So on there, that's why Cisco's kind of worried, because on Amazon is basically vendor agnostic, so it doesn't matter what vendor, right? Because you could be working with Cisco stuff, right? I forget the other team. Jupyter, there we go, Jupyter Networks. You can basically work with like other routers, you can configure them, right? What makes AWS is you're basically, quick rundown on cloud, all you're doing for cloud is you're renting someone else's servers. So instead of building your own servers, your own like data centers, you're telling Amazon, hey, let me borrow your like own servers. And there's like multiple layers of abstraction, like infrastructure as a service is basically saying, hey, let me actually control like the servers, like myself, give me like my little server, my little computer to borrow. And that's where you can actually do some software-defined networking stuff. The thing with cloud is that the whole thing is technically software-defined networking, because you'll rarely like touch stuff. Amazon actually has a service where you can actually borrow like a server, I believe, on their premises. Like they will actually give you like a specific thing, but those are rare cases, like government, military contracts where secrecy is involved. So there's not that much of a difference. They like blend together. That's what makes it so awkward. But yeah.
Before I gave you this topic, how much did you already know beforehand?
A lot.
Nice.
But to be fair though, I just know a lot about the
networking side?
Yeah, system administration, networking.
Hmm?
I'm more like DevOps, so I know a lot of stuff about developer. I know about a lot of stuff about operations. I know about, like I said, this is the thing with my skill set. It just goes very broad. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Chris. Oh, that's all right. That's just my knowledge just goes pretty broad, and I have like a really nice picture of everything. It took me a while to get there because everything looks so confusing. Like just programming on its own is a monster. Just trying to understand web servers and everything. But then when you add networking, but I'm starting to get it. It's kind of crazy. Pretty fun though.
In terms of presenting, really good. Really good in breaking down a lot of the acronyms, providing a lot of context, bringing a lot of things to our eyes, like the X point up there. Trying to relate a lot of the technical hard to imagine stuff a little bit more easier for people to imagine. Very strong voice, easy to listen, understand. it was very nice whenever you realized that maybe going into APIs would be a little too complex, and like try to bring it to a much more simpler level.
Yeah.
Very good point. Let's see, what else? Very good hand gestures. A lot of good pictures. You're trying breaking down everything that's up there. Since some of them, I guess, for example, yeah, just like all of this could be like very intimidating or like confusing for anybody looking at it for the first time. So really awesome breaking everything down.
Yeah, I don't like going too crazy on pictures. I think I like pictures with a lot of stuff, but you can break it down since it's kind of one of my old physics teachers told me, if you're a scientist, you love graphs. Graphs will give you endless amounts of information. They look very simple, but there's like, you can take like 1,000 things away from it. Similar with this picture, it looks pretty complicated. It's actually really simple. Like I said, router, switch. Switch usually has a lot of ports because you want to connect a lot of devices. And router, you only have like one port, but that's because you'll usually have like one connection from the switch to the router. You only need like one entry point really and one exit point. But yeah.
Any thoughts, recommendations, things Xavier did well?
I have a question. This is kind of weird. They go over all the subtopics you had for your project?
Not all the subtopics, mostly just because it's just too much. That's actually why I dislike what's it called? Oh, CompTIA. That's why I dislike a lot of the CompTIA entry certs. They're way too broad. There's like, you'll learn a lot from a general sense, but you almost learn too much that you actually can't see anything at all. That's why I started studying for the CCNA first. I went straight for the hard certs. A+ has some good knowledge though, I'll give it that. Personally, I'd read the books, but I wouldn't touch the exams. They're too entry level. Most people in university, if you like are comfortable with computers, you don't really need A+. A+ is more for like people who like have no background in computing or just working with computers. Most of you guys, you were able to set up the React. If not, you're still in the process of it. If you can set up React Native, you're pretty competent, I'd say. Like that thing was a monster because with the Android and then the environment variables as well. A lot of people who do the A+ have never seen that in their lives. But that's not to say the knowledge isn't good. It's good. It's just too broad. That's why I only covered some of it. Some of the subtopics went into like cloud, and cloud is a huge monster. Like AWS, they have like 200 services, and even for the entry people, like you at least need like 50 certs. The reason why AWS started providing certs is that it's basically like just so you know how to make things work without breaking anything too hard. Because the biggest thing you'll hear is called EC2. EC2 is you're renting servers, basically. You're renting like beefy computers to do like your computers, right? Instead of like, how you see people say, hey, have a Raspberry Pi hoster website, you're using Amazon's own Raspberry Pi equivalent. But like I said, the subtopics just go way too far. There's too much.
Any other further feedback?
Mainly, it might be better to go a little bit slower.
Oh yeah, that happens sometimes. End up going fast. Keep that.
You did a really good job. I've never heard of software defined before, and like even with the pictures that you showed, like just kind of showing how they relate to each other and their purpose in the network. I just agree with Maria in that, like showing like terminal commands or even like a picture of code, like people who aren't super technical, it's like very kind of like overwhelming. Even for me, it was kind of like, oh, okay, what's this? I kind of like look at it and kind of like decipher it.
Yeah, on the terminal command, you'll actually see this if you have you guys ever used PuTTY before? You might have if you have because your computer science classes. So if you PuTTY, this is actually what you'll see exactly. Like the thing when I say physically is that when you plug in your computer, this is also what you see. However, to PuTTY in, you have to SSH in. You actually have to unlock it, make it available to SSH in the first place.
Oh.
That's why. But this is basically what you'd see. There's some other cool stuff as well. So this happened, just a bit of backstory. So long time ago, if you try to access any of these routers, you'll usually see a banner like, hey, this is a secure network, you're using company's network and you're being monitored. That actually comes back from during the time of, you guys ever heard of the movie War Games? So War Games is, you might have heard the phrase, Strange game. What is Strange Game? The only winning move is not to play. I believe that's what War Games was. It's like,
Talking about the nuclear game.
yeah, there it is. And basically after that, there's like a whole bunch of cybersecurity things. And back then it was like the Wild West. Everyone was hacking into everything. And the banner was basically like, there's actually specific guidelines on the banners. Like, basically you want to tell people, hey, don't mess with this stuff. If you do, we'll prosecute you because our servers are like protected. It's kind of like an opening. You'll even see it in some sci-fi stuff as well.
Cool.
Any more feedback from folks? I guess everyone's staring at me.
Let's hear the feedback from Long.
All right, let's see. So I did like that at the very beginning, you did paint a landscape of how the complexity of the topic. I felt like you could have kept the explanation more simple in terms of like how you introduced it. So whenever you introduced it, you kind of threw a lot of terms up there. Like for me, you basically use AWS, Azure, and all these cloud services like pretty much back to back, which for me, I'm trying to listen, and it was kind of like, boom, okay, that's a lot of overload at once. I think in a way, it's good that you did like go with the assumption of our technical background, but I would say, I guess at a high level, I was still actually like I got a grasp of what you were trying to say, but I was actually really confused a lot of times because one thing that you did do is that you brought a lot of external materials to the conversation, which like there was a lot of terms, and I was just like, I was trying to make connections between the terms, but it was kind of overwhelming.
Oh, that's true.
So-
Router switches. Yeah.
So in terms of that, like for example, whenever we say AWS, Azure, blah blah blah, you could just replace that with cloud services.
Yeah.
So what I wrote is that you should keep things in context, but you should choose certain things to be vague, because if you introduce all the details, it will be a lot for me. Just from my point of view, I've never heard of this before. To take in. So yeah, definitely watch out for terminology. I highly recommend for your use case to use more metaphors and analogies to kind of help break the ice. I did really like that you used pictures to demo. I do agree with Ryan and other folks about the technicalities. Again, I think the assumption is good that we are technical, but the thing is that not everybody has the same background. So for example, PuTTY, if you're a macOS user, never heard of it. So that is something that you want to watch out for. You don't know which kind of background people usually has. So I think that is something to watch out for. So even if you do use terminologies with technical people, everybody has a different technical preference. So you never know for sure if that's the technology people truly understand or how they perceive it. So be really careful with that. Again, I would highly recommend to not use less terminology and less specifics and more on just general information, because then it doesn't run into a trap of you're assuming that these people know they can make the same connections as these technologies. So yeah, I would actually encourage you to generalize your material a lot more. I think one thing that you did do is that your pattern is that you like to take a lot of detail. So you're painting a picture, but you give out a lot of detail first, and then you kind of get to the main point at the very end by taking all those wrapped together. To me, I didn't really understand what you were saying until that moment, right? So you explained a lot. You said this is the technology. I'm just trying to go back. So like you would talk about, like you would give us the diagram. You would talk about the diagram. You would go over the specifics, and then you would get to the main point. And I was pretty much lost until you got to that point, right? So you want to reverse that word. You want to state what this all means up front and very clearly, because it's very technical topic. So you want to start off with that explanation as soon as possible, and then you can kind of break it down. Always start off with a high level and then break it down. I really like how you did introduce a lot of elements and elements, like just how useful it is at scale. You pretty much let us know like that stuff. I really like that. You barely had any bullet points, which is impressive on its own, right? So yeah, that was really great to watch. But I think one thing that did get you, in my opinion, was just scoping. So you introduced a lot of like external
stuff, right?
sources, right? So we're focusing on like just the distributed, I guess, the software
SDN, yep, software
Yeah,
defined
the
networks.
SDN, right?
Mhm.
So whenever you introduce a lot of external topics, it introduces kind of a back and forth motion in terms of conversation. So like we're going from this topic to this topic, this topic to this topic.
Smooth
this
it
topic
out,
to that
basically
topic.
go back a little bit, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a seesaw,
Mhm.
and for me, I'm kind of like I'm basically running back and forth between conversation, which kind of makes it really confusing for me as a topic.
Mhm.
So try to keep it straight, like a straight line, like everything builds together in a straight line. So watch out for that seesaw effect. I think you want to make sure you scope in the right terms, whatever. I did like that you did include a personal story. Actually, not a lot of people do that, but I think telling personal stories is make it a lot more engaging. Like, hey, my friends and I did this. It's a lot more fun to listen to. This is a personal for me, but diagrams are terrifying.
Oh, right.
The thing is that I experienced this in my cloud computing class. I hated it because he would like throw out like a diagram. He would point it out. He'll explain the components, but the thing is that there's 10 or 20 different components of the diagram, and I'm just like, there's 5 APIs. Which one are you like? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not able to make the same connection.
Looking at
So-
the Docker diagrams or
Yeah, it's something else. Yeah, it's very hard because for cloud stuff and networking, like this is truly a challenge topic because they are very diagram focused. So the challenge is to, I don't know, like I actually don't know how others maybe get some
I feel like what you should do, if you're trying to talk about this, is the main focus of networking is to worry about capacity, right? So you can give a smaller subsection of the network, like kind of like what you did at the beginning, and then you kind of need to build off of the idea that we need parallel lanes to cover the amount of throughput that we need, which is what networking is all about. You know, and kind of draw into that, and then you can kind of shut up.
Yeah, that is true. You
Okay.
could have done.
could have covered what networking is. Okay, that's actually good because most people actually don't know what networking really is.
Yeah, this is a topic that I've kind of seen in a lot of cloud diagrams down the line. It is like even for me working with cloud is very, very confusing.
In all fairness, for that long, most people software-defined networking is actually the very last topic you learn in all like. If you're doing entry-level networking, you don't touch SDN until the very end.
Yeah,
That's why I don't like SDN as a topic because it's just so like.
it's so big.
It makes sense when you're there though. You're like, oh, but you have like, for example, most courses on networking go like 60 to 80 hours. Like just to pass the CCNA, it's like 60, 80 hours. That's not even including labs, which is like its own like 40-hour monster. Like networking is not that hard, but it's the awkward thing with programming is some topics are like they don't make sense unless you do everything, and even then it's like, whoa.
Yeah, that's where like you have to use analogies and metaphors and stories. Like
Yeah.
otherwise, like trying to bring all of that context together at once is just like it's just gonna go over our heads. So like I guess the main point is just to really focus on trying to deliver like the concept. You delivered it perfectly at the very end actually. Whenever you like say essentially this is what this all is all about. And then everything kind of was like, okay, that kind of like made everything make sense. I wish I heard that more in the beginning and kind of sprinkled throughout to like connect that main point over and over throughout the presentation. Because again, it was like a lot of disparate details leading up to that point, and I didn't know what that point was until the very end, basically. So that was something to watch out for. I did like you showed more than you told. That's what you did. You showed us what was going on. But I did think I wish there was more of a balance. I wish there like you did break. You described a lot, but I wish you explained like certain things a little bit more, especially like whenever you start using the terms. I was just like, wait. I had to rely on the previous IT knowledge to kind of connect the dots, which is depending on the audience, okay. That's something you definitely want to watch out for. Okay, I think I already said like the wrap up and conclusion. That was actually very, very well done. Like the way you let everything else happen was really good. Question answer, nobody did that, so that's amazing. I think it's really hard for me. I don't know if I'm like subtle in this opinion,
Mhm.
but like I feel like your pictures could use like I don't know if I want to use labels because like that still could be very confusing. But like whenever you were pointing back and forth, I was still processing what you were saying as you were pointing things around. So it went really fast. So it's something you want to watch out for.
Oh, I think I know what I can do in set one. So before the slide, I can show a picture of what a router looks like on its own with a switch on the side, and then show you guys
Yeah.
side by side. I'm actually wasn't gonna go deeper than that because there's actually something called layer 3 switch. So this is a layer 1. These are like yeah. So it's like something called layer 1 to the layer 2 and 3 switch. Basically, those are like switches and routers. You know the devices you have in your house, right? Those are actually a switch and router in one.
Yeah.
They're actually not as good as switch router combinations because the thing with switch is they have like perfect throughput, like 1 gigabyte per each port. They're actually insanely like good. It's so efficient. I didn't think it was real, but then I look into it's like yeah, they're actually.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So yeah, I think you could chunk out your topics a little bit more to make it more understandable. And I truly do see this as a very challenging subject. If I were in your shoes, I would have kept it as a very sweeping generalization. I am not going to lie. Because introducing all those details will probably detract from, I guess, your main point, right? That this is a really complex topic. But this is the kind of problem that this kind of network solves. That's what you want to convey at most. Rather than like how I think it's good that you showed like how certain things work. But I still think you could have left some parts out to make sure that main message is clear.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think that's all I have. You did really, really impressive in terms of this really complex topic. It seemed like a lot.
Yeah, I've actually given a few like sorry. So at UT, I actually like taught some like small group of like 5-6 people. I love my dual monitor setup. I never bring it here because it's too much, but I love dual monitor because you can actually give a lesson. So you can double the screen, right? Kind of like what Maria's doing here. Basically, I showed them like networking stuff with Wireshark. It was actually really fun. Like I wowed like 6 freshmen at UT when I went on the hackathon there. That was fun.
Awesome. Oh, Maria, the last question is what did you feel like you improved on last time?
Last time, I was more comfortable with the topic. So last time, what I covered was actually the Bayes theorem. The thing with Bayes theorem though is, I love complicated topics. Is they challenge you, trying to make them complicated topics understandable. If you know how to analogize a complicated topic, then you actually know that topic really well. Analogies and metaphors are actually like pretty. It's an art in a sense because the difference between someone who's really good and someone who doesn't really understand it, or someone who knows how to explain things well, is how good their analogy is. Some analogies, they sound great, but they're actually garbage when you think about it deeply. Whereas some analogies, they're like really good. Even when you think hard about it, it like has really good parallels. But the thing is, if you're not very experienced in a topic, your analogies could actually be really bad. You might be hiding like something really egregious.
On that, that's a very debatable.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a spicy topic.
Yeah. So yeah, some people feel like certain metaphors and analogies should convey everything about. It should be a model of a one-on-one model of things. But for me, from like a psychological standpoint, there is, or more of like a human standpoint, there is the concept of a training wheel. So you wouldn't necessarily drive ride a bike with training wheels on a road. That thing slows you down. We call this kind of a crutch interaction. So basically, you would actually use it for the real deal, but you give people a mental model that is good enough to get a taste breaker. Because if you try to soak in all of like, it's like looking at an abstract painting. It's hard to let all of that soak you in all at once. So I don't know. My opinion is that training wheels and crutches and mental models are more worth it because it's more accessible for more folks. If it can reach more people, then it does its job. But again, there is a different crowd of folks where it's like you're teaching people the wrong stuff. You're understanding it incorrectly. Maybe you shouldn't be using those mental models. But there could be a better one. Yeah, there's always that kind of balance.
Yeah, I'd say there's room for both on my side, though I like teaching people more like the details. This is more of my personal stuff just because I do tutor sometimes, so although it depends, right? I don't always tell them everything they need. They don't need to know everything, right? But when it comes to like topics I really like, I like giving people like deep stuff. I don't like them having like a too surface level, you know, it bothers me most.
Yeah, I don't know. I would watch out for it though.
This kind of reminds me of this one video. It was this one professional astrophysicist trying to explain kind of like concepts of gravity to like different levels of like age ranges.
Oh, I
Like
love those.
Yeah.
like somebody that was like 5 years old, a middle schooler, high schooler, college, PhD candidate, up to the some sort of like
Like
dean of physics,
Yeah.
something like,
I
and like
remember
it was
this.
just crazy, just how simple and then just how crazy it was at the end.
Yes,
Like,
I-
what are
I-
you even talking about now?
I love the way that those videos show how people bring things down, because that's really what it's about. It's just different levels of knowledge and different ways of thinking. So yeah, wait, more comfortable with the topics. Cool. What do you feel like you can improve on next time?
Just explaining things better, or you know, just more smooth. I like that's the fun thing about tech actually. Explaining tech is like can go pretty difficult, just because tech as a general, a lot of the stuff is like pretty complicated. It's hard to explain. Well, you know, like the me from a year ago, the way I understand how things work now is like night and day difference. Like the current me could actually explain a lot of stuff. So right now I have a nice. So if you've ever looked at you guys ever seen like the roadmaps for front end, back end, full stack? I basically know the roadmap for front end, back end, and DevOps out pretty well. Like I have a pretty good understanding, so that's why I feel like I can explain things better and more smooth. Like you said, long I actually chunk better. But I do have to keep in mind that I know a bit of other stuff that I kind of forget people don't know.
Yeah.
It's also the awkward thing as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. I think that's all from me. Is there anything anybody else would like to add?
You guys have no questions?
If you guys are ever curious about networking, just let me know. If you guys want to see something cool, if you open up your command line and type ipconfig, if you're in Mac, I think it's ifconfig.
I think it is.
Yeah, at the very bottom, it's one of the IP addresses. You'll actually be able to see what address, what's the word I'm looking for, the actual IP address of the router you're specifically connected to. And here's the thing: sometimes the same like access point rate has like 3 different. So you have edu roam, UK guest, right? Sometimes they'll all be on the same access point, but there's something called virtual private networks. Sorry, not virtual private. Damn it! There's VLAN, virtual local area network, and that's basically how you can like segment people. So yeah, they're all on the same router, but you have like, hey, this is the entry point for people who are students, for the public. It gets pretty cool. Networking is really cool, but all the cool stuff is it takes so long to be able to do anything cool.
Yeah, if y'all are going to do like app development, I guess to keep it more in context with that category, whenever you work with the cloud, you will run into all these topics. One thing that a lot of CS students do here, which I do not think they should do, is underestimate the networking class here. Pay very close attention. You will run into all of that at your work all the time. Even for more of the complicated networking stuff, I make basic stuff in my class, and it helped me out a lot with complicating. So if you go to the very first slide for this, you see that data plane, control plane, application plane. There is this thing called Kubernetes. It's a very important thing to understand those 3 concepts to understand Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is quite literally how the entire world runs right now. So yeah, it can expand a lot. It's a very big topic. But yeah, I guess Xavier gave y'all all the candy to taste in the future. It's applicable for a lot of stuff. I recently found out, like, I think even League of Legends, you know, that the game client, every single time it's creates a session, it may just be making a Kubernetes container, which
That's
yeah, that's how a lot of game servers are running, how they're like scaling beyond the skies right now. So yeah, you'll look at Riot Games. I looked at their Java applications. It's like, why do you need me to know AWS and Kubernetes? I was like, okay, this sounds like a Silicon Valley tech job. Like, this is not game dev at all anymore. But it does reach that level at this point. So, but stuff to consider if y'all are interested in this career path.
especially as we move more towards the cloud.
Every day, dude, if AWS like falls to earth, like 50% of the US would die. Just on the spot. Like I shit you not. Like AWS, I think in terms of like if you like just Amazon, they cover like 70 to 80% of like the entire like
Walmart
network
is-
coverage. Like the entire businesses are ran on top of AWS. If it like literally every one of their data centers just blew up, like we would all riot. We would all riot.
When I worked at Home Depot and Amazon for their warehousing stuff, they all use AWS actually. When you do work, you'll be able to almost tell immediately what cloud provider they use, because your website will say AWS because no one wants to buy domain names because they're expensive. So you for like Walmart's like sign up stuff, when I worked retail, it was like you can literally see AWS sign up and like.
Okay. Cool. All right, I think we should move on to wireframing. Just so we can roll on that.
Awesome sauce.
Yes, but yeah, very nicely done.